Let's sit.
Yeah.
Got it. Can
I'm
I?
sure you know that Kathryn put me on this course. So last year when we started it, I just had a look and see that pressure to do it, and we weren't sure what happened, and it went really well, and things like that.
Okay, so well, today's Marine Chatty is kind of informal-ish. I am by no means an expert in communications. It's just something I do for a part-time job, and I've learned a lot of cool tricks and tips along the way. Oh, why can I not go to the next slide? Oh, there we go. So what is science communication? So when we talk about science communication, a lot of things come to mind. And generally, people think about presentations and publications. This is not the focus of my presentation, because there are a lot of better tools out there for presentations and publications and writing labs. And I think the university does offer a lot of access to that. So what I'm going to be focusing on is more the kind of short formats, blogs, podcasts, social media posts, videos, social engagement, and things that you should think about when you do your presentations, not so much publications, but when any form of communication, kind of some tips and tidbits and things to kind of think about when you're communicating your science. So let's go back to the 1800s. Back in history, you had a lot of artists and poets and scientists that would engage with the public, would actually go down to social forums, stand in the street, show their inventions, and really talk to the community. And what we find is actually this connection between the public and scientists used to be a lot more overlap. And as we have progressed, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where we've actually created these silos between us and the public as scientists, as well as between research fields. And this is now kind of changed in the digital sphere, where the access to information is a lot easier, and we're trying to break these silos. And that's kind of the purpose of scientific communication. So we live in a world of constant distractions. There's Netflix, there's Instagram, there's Reels. People's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. If you can't catch someone like 2 seconds on a reel, people swipe, they don't listen to your content. So how do we get our message across? We're getting there. There's some formats that help. But we have to, before we can answer the question of how, we have to think of it as I like to think of it as a pyramid. So before we can answer how, we have to think of what are we trying to communicate? And before we can think about what we want to communicate, we want to think of who are we talking to? And even before we get there, we have to answer the question of why. Why do we want to communicate our science? So science shapes the world we know. And as scientists, we all know that. We all know how important science is, but I don't think that people today really know to the extent of how much science impacts their lives. And a way I like to view scientific communication is as a business transaction. And if we do that, we can then use digital marketing tools and other marketing tools from advertisers and stuff in our scientific communication that helps us achieve our goal. Because essentially we want our audience to buy into our story. We want to either spread information and educate, we want to maybe get funding, we want to initiate change or address social issues, we want to inspire the next generation, et cetera, et cetera. And essentially we want to bridge certain gaps. Before we can bridge the certain gaps, we need to know what those gaps are. First one is perception. How are scientists portrayed? Hollywood has done a great job of trying to portray us as either evil, crazy, awkward, and unrelatable. So here are a few tweets about scientists being represented in movies. Hello, I am a female scientist in the movie. I look like a swimsuit model. I have a PhD from Caltech in the exact subject that is plaguing the world in this movie. And I will watch as a former athlete saves the world. Hello, I'm a scientist in Namibia. I know everything about theoretical physics, geology, astronomy, cosmology, history, biology, linguistics. Oh yeah, and I'm also a hacker. Quite unrealistic. And then last one's my favorite. Hello, I'm a statistician in Namibia. Just kidding, statisticians are never in movies. So how do we change perception? I think this is probably the hardest of all to try and achieve. But I've got some tips. The 4 Bs. To be personal. There's no better spokesperson for your work than you. To be accessible, to make your work available to the public. You are the best, spokesperson for your work. And if your work is not out there, no one's going to read it, no one's going to care. The third one is to be clear. So explain the overarching story, like understand why is it important for the person you're talking to. Frame your story into concepts and analogies to your audience so that they can understand them, and answer the question of how this will affect them, because they don't care how it's going to affect someone else. Everyone essentially is quite selfish. And so they want to know, how is this going to affect me personally? And the last one is to be honest. So try and be more relatable. If someone can relate to you, they're more likely to buy into your story.
Do you say that because you think that scientists are not honest?
No, I'm just saying that sometimes we don't like to be vulnerable because we want to be seen as a specific, pillar of knowledge. And I think that if we're honest about our mistakes, and yes, science is not, scientific fact is sometimes questionable. Sometimes, the fact is not as steadfast as, something's changed and new information comes in and we adapt and we change and grow.
To be honest about that.
To be honest about that and be honest about the process.
Yeah.
But I'll get to something later about that as well.
Because I do think scientists are dishonest, that's why.
You think scientists are
I think they are dishonest.
Well, it depends on which level and like personal,
Yeah.
and which fields of science you're in.
And it's how they package information, so they package it dishonestly.
Yeah. The second one, related to us, is to build trust. There's a lot of, I don't think I need to go into too much detail about why people distrust scientists, and the COVID pandemic has kind of created this whole thing of like dishonesty and untrustworthy and not understanding the scientific process. So we need to make sure that our science is out there, because if someone is going to, talk about this aspect of science, it might as well be you. And it might be you. It's better for it to be you because you will obviously tell the truth of the story. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and if you make sure that there's good quality, good information, you can hopefully combat this misinformation problem. So here are some 5 points on trying to build trust: is to have a clear message. And then something in business, we talk about a value proposition. So that's kind of finding what someone else is going to buy into and making sure that you meet that demand. Second is to focus on good content. So it doesn't matter what it is. Don't think, I have to post every day, and rather post every week and make a good content than post a bunch of nonsense throughout the week. And then 3 is authenticity and consistency. So to be consistent in what you're saying, don't chop and change. We know like politicians will say, oh yes, this is really good. And then next they're like, oh no, it's really bad. And then, so as scientists, we got to be consistent in our message. The 4th thing is to kind of show social proof. So case studies, real life examples of science and whatever your message is does go a long way. And then this is kind of going into champion the wins and the positives. We as scientists often go, this is the statement, but these are all the negatives. And yes, we need to be honest about the negatives, but we also need to champion the positives and make that the key message. And the 3rd gap is language. So scientific language is objective. It has to be. Think of a scientific paper. You have to be complex to be clear and unambiguous. You have to explicitly say what you mean. But when you're talking to a normal person or someone that's not scientifically minded, it leads to sounding cold and convoluted, distanced from the emotional side of things. And people respond to emotion. Therefore, sometimes they perceive scientists as being cold and clinical and logical. So there's a few tips on like trying to define a voice. So trying to find a good language. And this is a business example of using like marketing tools or ways to define how you want to sound in your kind of presence to the public. So for example, here you set values, and a lot of companies set values. And I think personally, it's also quite good to set those values for yourself and as a scientist to kind of stand by these things, because then that helps to define your public image or whatever kind of image you want to create. And then you can also decide on like a scale. Do you want to be a very formal person? I think this depends a lot on the type of content that you're creating. If you're doing a scientific journal, you want it to be quite formal. You want it to be quite detached, professional, serious, but you would also want it to be quite lively. So just to think about, this is just a way of thinking about how to define like a tone of voice that will help you in, whatever content you're going to create. So then the next step up from why, once we've decided, okay, why we want to communicate our science, we have to then think of who are we going to be talking to. Because if I talk to a kid and I talk to my mom, it's going to be a very different conversation about my science. Even though it's the same content, it's phrased in a very different way. So there's three kind of pillars in this who section. One is to find out what your audience cares about. Because like I said, we react to emotions. So if you find what your audience is looking for, you're able to connect with them. Second is to tell a story. We remember things in stories better than we do in just, if you give someone a fact. If you make it an analogy or a story or a fable or something, people will remember it better. And then the third one is to learn a little bit about psychology and how you can use psychology to your benefit. And I will talk about that later. So I've got a few tips on how to break the barrier between you and your audience. It's 6 simple tips to connecting to audience, literally simple. S, slow down. I'm very aware that I speak fast in general, but most people talk at about 200 words per minute, but 100 words per minute is way better for people to remember. So yes, you might have a lot of information you want to get out. You kind of have to remember to slow down, and also to create pause, emphasis. And if you stop, people tend to look up and be like, oh, what's happening? And then you catch their attention again. I is interaction. Everyone has a very limited attention span. So if you create engagement, they're more likely to continue listening. And people generally learn through doing. So give them examples. Tell them to think of something, think of an experience. If you're not able to use like an activity, you can ask them to think of stories that will connect to them on an emotional level. And then that brings in an interaction that they're bringing something to the party as well. M is multiple approaches. So people learn and retain information in different ways. So if I ask you to think of the number 3, how many of you saw the actual number 3? How many of you counted 2, 3? Everyone will think of it differently. Some people will see the number 3, some will see the actual word 3. Everyone's mind works differently. So if you're able to approach something in different ways, you're able to capture more of the audience's kind of brain chemistry or the way that their brain functions. And if you diversify your approaches and your platforms, so there's an idea in digital marketing that you'll take a piece of content and you'll break that down into one core idea that is a blog, a podcast, 4 different posts about different aspects of the thing, a video. So you're able to take one idea and break it down into its components and diversify the approaches and platforms, and then you will reach a larger audience. This is the repurposing of your content. So yeah, just recycling that content, and also recycle it a year from now. Go back to what you did before, and if you've got a better way of talking about that, take that again and recycle it. P is to use props. It helps when explaining abstract concepts visually. This can also be achieved using good visuals. So if you don't actually have a prop, you can use a video or icons or something that will bring the audience in and make a visual map of what you're talking about. L is likability. And this kind of ties into other things that have been said, is to have charisma, to smile, and to try not to be condescending. Sometimes we unknowingly treat other people who don't know about science like they don't know anything. And so trying to meet them at that right level. And there's been a lot of discussion about this, especially in like rural communities when we as scientists go in, is trying to learn their language. And they're not stupid. They don't, it's not that they don't know about these concepts, they just call it different things, and trying to relate that and meet people at the same level, because we're all humans and we all want to, like, we're not stupid, we're not whatever. Just because we're scientists doesn't also mean we have all the answers. And I think that's a key in trying to communicate your science effectively. And then E is to end well. When you have a kind of circular, think of your communications as a circular thing, with the start and end being the same. If you ask a question in the beginning, you must answer that question at the end. And having a strong ending is sometimes really, really good. It's good for people to remember what you said, especially when you're sitting at a presentation and you have multiple presentations in a row. People generally zone off in the middle bit. So if you have a good beginning and good end, and you're able to get your key message across, that's great. So here's a little bit of psychology that I was talking about. And there's one thing I like to point out called the dilution effect. So the dilution effect is a judgment bias in which people underutilize diagnostic or relevant information when non-diagnostic or irrelevant information is also present. What happens is it results in a less extreme judgment. If you combine non-diagnostic and diagnostic information, you get a less extreme judgment than if you just used diagnostic information. And I'll explain that now. So this is a great talk by Nero Sivanathan, and it's a TEDx talk. And basically I'll give an example that he talks about in the actual talk, but what you do is you end up, our mind works in averages. So if you give me 5 points of information, 3 are strong, 2 are weak, I'm going to average that out, and then it ends up being less strong than if you gave me 3 strong points by themselves. So I'll explain a little bit more now. So now you are looking to buy a dinnerware set. And you come across this great deal. It's 8 dinner plates, 8 soup bowls, and 8 dessert plates. Right, perfect, that's what you want. But then at the same time, you come across another option where it's 8 dinner plates, 8 soup bowls, 8 dessert plates, 6 cups, but 2 are broken, 1 saucer, and 7 are broken, 7 saucers are broken. So you end up with a lot more actually that you're going to get out, but some of the items are broken. So what would you pay for each of these different sets? And in a psychological study, they found that for the first one, people are willing to pay £390 for that. I don't know what is Boston Gold, I don't know. But that was the average price for this, fancy dinner set. Yeah. But for the second one, and I want you to point out that it's exactly the same thing, and you're getting a few broken items, but you're getting 6 cups and 1 saucer added, people were only willing to pay £192. So the idea is that the broken items taint the full set. And so we have to be careful with our own communication. If we provide too much information and not all of the information is strong, or it's a bit wishy-washy, it might dilute the actual impact that you're trying to make with your communications. So then we'll briefly talk about what kind of content. So there's different types of communication. Already spoke about a few of them. So we've got blogs, we've got podcasts, we've got TikToks, we've got Reels, we've got Instagram, we've got social media posts in general, videos, social engagement. I think at this point in time, anytime you're talking about your science, even in conversation, elevator pitches, talking to someone, talking to a colleague, that can be considered communication. So I'm not going to focus too much on the what, because I think we all kind of know what that is. So the next step is how. How do we communicate our science? So we want to inform, we want to persuade, but we also want to delight. So we want people to come away from the interaction feeling good, feeling something positive. So we live in a visual world. Sorry, take a photo. We live in a visual world, and so we want to capture and hold people's attention. So there's two important things that you want to first capture their attention, and then secondly, hold it, which in this world is becoming quite difficult, you know, where people's attention spans are quite short. But the key is visual communication. If you're not able to engage with them visually, it doesn't have to be a pretty graphic, it can be just text on a page. So trying to engage the visual learning aspect of it. A lot of us are visual learners. Evidence of this is that we have been using images for millennia. Think of cave paintings. You know, people tell stories through images. As a child, that is one of the first things you do is you look, okay, we don't really know how to read, but it's the first thing we identify with is images on a page in a storybook. So just to round up, remember, we are very highly distracted people. There's so much stuff coming through us or coming at us in a day. And so we need to break through that. And pictures are easier to remember. If you're able to summarize in a picture, then you've basically got your communication done. It's nice to make visual shortcuts. Think about it. We've got icons for certain things. And if you're able to utilize that like visual identity, it makes it easier for people to remember and identify with that. And lastly, it transcends boundaries. You know, we all speak English here, but not everywhere in the world. Some people speak French, some people speak, you know, or some people speak, you know, a whole bunch of different languages, but images are able to transcend those language boundaries and make it more inclusive. So there are a few roadmaps to follow when communicating our science, or rather an atlas. And A is to adapt to new media. So like I said, we've got multiple formats now, and learning to adapt our content for those formats is very important. Second thing is to translate scientific jargon. We like to stick to our acronyms and we like to stick to our things that we know. And this is very important that we need to, you know, break that down into something that is understandable. We need to learn about our audience. Like I said, you need to know what they care about, how you connect with them on an emotional level. And then the last two is one is to anticipate questions. And S is to simplify without dumbing down. We don't really want to create that, oh, I'm the scientist and I know everything. But you want to make it simple enough that people understand what you're talking about. So yeah, in summary, we have to know why we want to do something. Then we have to look at who we're talking about. And then we can decide what we want to share. And then we can think of how we can go about doing that. And the last thing I want to point out is that communication is a two-way street. We say it's scientific communication because we will talk, but then we also need to listen. We also need to have that backwards and forwards. We need to anticipate questions. It's an engagement thing. I'm not here to just sit here and give you information and walk away. There's no purpose in that. So we have to create that two-way street. So yeah, this is the end of the presentation, which I went through quite quickly.
Because you talk at 200.
Yeah, because I went through 200, yeah. So yeah, this is create knockout content. So the idea was now I can show you a little bit. I might have to share my other screen. I'm going to stop share this.
So, you know, like when you communicate science, you know, it's the who and the why at the bottom of your panel. So I think sometimes they can be changed around in terms of first deciding who you want to communicate to, and therefore and why you want to communicate to them, because they're different targets of information.
Well, the why I'm talking about is more of the kind of the urge to communicate. We have to understand, where is it coming from? At what point? Why do we want to communicate? And then I think the who and the why do kind of mix a little in that.
I only say that because it's about what you want the outcome of
Yeah.
communication to be, because that's really important. And some of the, it doesn't matter that you identify who you want to communicate to. It's like, why do you want to, what is the outcome you want from that communication? Because it's so hard to kind of almost know that and get it right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's kind of journey often.
So one thing I do with the students is I ask them in the course to, before they create anything, they create what's called a bio persona. So the person that they're looking at. And then you kind of give them, like, what are they looking for? What education level are they at? And then whenever they create a piece of content, we refer back to that persona that they created and say, well, does it link? Is it the right for that audience?
Yeah.
Is the jargon okay for that audience? Because, for example, if you're looking at, like, I want to talk to you about my science, I will use a different level of language than, for example, you know, if I was talking to my mom or someone else.
That's true. And the presentations that the honor students gave, they're saying middle-aged Caucasian granny living in the southern suburbs, you know, whatever, versus, and then they put their pitch together for that audience. I really love that. You know?
I think it's very important. So yeah, the last bit of this was to just show some examples of ways in which you can create content. And a lot of people in this room do this. Canva. Canva is a very good source. So, for example, we can create a design. I don't know, what does everyone make? An Instagram story. This is the free version. So you can pay, it's free. But then, for example, here you get things that say pro, and then you have to pay for that. I don't pay for Canva. So here you can get different templates. It's a great resource to find different templates. So you can, like, choose this, which is like cake. But actually, no, I don't want to apply that. For example, if you want to look for something specific, communication, and we want to do like this, and that will come out. So this is a paid version, so you can just delete that if you don't want the paid thing. And they do have a lot of things in here. You've got different elements that you can create and use. You can add different text. Internet's a little slow. You can add photos. So here they have some stock photos that you can use. So for example, you want to add that and then, you know, replace background. So you're able to do that. There's a couple other styles. So you can click on styles and then it will give you the color palettes. You can find videos here. You can find free audio. They have a lot of paid stuff. So sometimes it can be a bit limiting. But I'm going to put together a cheat sheet and then distribute it to everyone because there's other things. For example, if I want to get a video, I go to a place called Pexels. So Pexels, you can find photos or videos, and these are royalty-free videos. Huh? Yeah. So this is quite good, and you can just download for free. There's this thing called the Creative Commons, and if you're not using it to get money, which a lot of us are not doing, our communication is for just disseminating information. You can generally use a lot of the stuff for free. But if you're looking to try and get like advertising for it, can become a bit iffy. So you're supposed to, you know, represent who you got this from. And for example, you can then just drop this into here and you can go to your uploads. And then you can click that and then just, you know, replace background. And now it's the video of that. And you can move it. So it's here in the middle. And then it will display. So there's a lot that you can do in Canva. There is also, so Pexels gives you videos and photos. And you've got this one called Unsplash. and Unsplash also can give you some static images. It generally only does images. I don't think it does any videos. And then the tools that I use the most is Flat Icon. And this gives you access to a bunch of free things. I pay for this because you can get what's called an SVG as well, which is then a vector graph that you can then edit and change all the lines. But the free stuff is pretty easy to use and download. And then in the same company as Flat Icon, there's a thing called FreePic. They also do videos, a lot of like images. But if you want to just do vectors, you can then get something like this that is, you know, rather nice, and then you can download it. Generally, the same thing here is that if you pay for it, you can download any format, but if you don't pay, you can only download the PNG version of these images. And then if you're looking to create videos with songs, there are a few other things. We've got Last.fm, which allows you to download some songs and shorts for free. You've got free sounds, so you can download, for example, like river waves, which is like 2 minutes of river waves. And so you can download a whole bunch of different sounds. And then, yeah, mix it. Okay, this one I think you have to pay. But if you go to SoundCloud, there is this thing which is called royalty-free music, no copyright music. And you're able to, on some of them here, it says free download. This one you can't free download, but this one you have to buy. This one's a free download. So you can find certain songs that you can then free download and then use it. I use Canva, or I will use Adobe Illustrator, but Adobe Illustrator is expensive. So the free version of this is Inkscape, which is great. So if anyone wants to be able to edit SVGs, like vector images or EPS images, Inkscape is a great tool to use.
So Adobe, we can also get cheaper.
It's not that much cheaper though. Yeah, I mean, it's still, in my opinion, it's still quite high in budget for, I don't know, do you have?
No, it's not Illustrator, it's Canvas.
Okay.
It's not Inkscape, it's not Adobe, it's the other one, but still,
Yeah.
the price range is the same, I think.
Yeah, so I managed to get they had at the beginning of the year, the Adobe Creative Suite was like on special. So I managed to get that, which gave me access to a bunch of stuff. But for me, if you're looking at just trying to start off, Inkscape I actually prefer Inkscape to Adobe Illustrator for the functionality. No, but that's also, I learned in Inkscape. And so then there's some things you can do in Inkscape that I will actually import just Inkscape, just to do that thing and then come back out, because it's like the tracing of images is better in Inkscape than it is in Adobe Illustrator. Inkscape. So let's download this one. Download it. Oh, it's not gonna. It's downloading. Oh, it's downloading zip. Okay. Let's see what it does. Does it have the EPS in there? Yeah. So the EPS or the AI, either one. I think the AI has more functionality. So if you do Inkscape, you can open it in Inkscape. And then you can literally just move her out. Or, you know, you want to change her hair color. I want it to be that color. And then you can change the bits to whatever color you want. So it's quite, yeah, this one's quite nice. It's, the functionality is pretty easy to learn, in my opinion. Yeah. Any other questions about anything? People online as well. Yeah, BioRender, is that, but that's an online platform, right? Yeah, I have BioRender as well, BioRender. So BioRender, what's nice about that is it has like you can create cell walls, and they've got this. If you are using it for academic purposes, it's fine, it's free. But as soon as you want to use it for commercial purposes, you have to be careful. Yeah, I like it because it's got like a lot of these presets of like molecular stuff, and then you have to look it up. Yeah, for paper assignment. And also if you're looking at trying to do like show a cell or show something.
So the things I really love that journals have pushed very hard for is, and some insist on it, is the graphical abstract. Yeah, and then I think with the pressure to make really nice graphics that is on.
Are you guys still there? It went so quiet.
I also can't hear a thing, Layla.
Okay, so it's not just me. Pero I love you, Jojas. What's happening?
These are, for me, tools that are to be used by people who are not necessarily artistically inclined. The way I do it is I actually draw a lot of my like graphical abstracts. One of my first ones I ever did, I actually drew one of these paper and then scanned it in and then imported that into Inkscape so I could then change and smooth. Now I have an iPad, so I can do it. But the idea is that you know, if you are not graphically inclined or don't feel like doing this.
No, I'm not graphically inclined. Yeah,
Then you can use
I play with
so like
that.
for example here, DNA, this is great. You can just if you just want one little piece of something, you can take it off and move it around. Yeah. Should I link back onto this?
Yeah.
Pixel. I will send my planners to, I will like do like a cheat sheet and send it to everyone with everything.
This is
Share screen, just share. Yeah, Blender. And then there's a couple other ones. I mean, there's a lot out there. And actually, this might be something that MARiS could do is like, if you've got like a SciComm button, you could click on it and there's a whole bunch of free resources. We could do that on the website. Because that would be nice. Then people can, you know, always know. Because for even now, it's like, what is the thing for the sounds? It's called freesounds.org, but I keep forgetting it. And, you know, if someone finds something new, they could add it to a list and it's available for people. Yeah. Blender does animation. Also got like Powtoon, which, you know, a lot of people do their presentations and animations. And Powtoon you can do for free, but like limited, yeah. I think yeah, 3 minutes, yeah, and you get the Powtoon like logo on it, which is, I mean, so that the Powtoon goes out. But that's a little bit like, for publication, you need to have all of your images need to be in like what's it, vector format, EPS format, or SVG, and good quality. Well, that's the thing, is that here Inkscape, when you want to export, right, I can set. Oh, why? It's my. Oh, did I turn my? Oh, I disconnected again. No, I'm connected.
I can hear you now, Kath.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Sorry.
I muted myself as you came online.
So I don't know. So like in Inkscape, for example, here you can set your DPI. So you can say like, yeah, 600 DPI. You can go more than 600 DPI. It's a bit, otherwise the file's too big. But yeah, you can change everything about it. It's just good.
Oh, do we lose it again?
Yeah, sounds like it.
I haven't used Inkscape in a long time. Let's see. Do I even still have it? Luther, you're still using these platforms?
Yeah, I still use Inkscape and Blender. It depends what I want to do it for.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm very lazy, I just use PowerPoint.
I love PowerPoint.
All right. So Inkscape, because it's running memory down on my computer, because I run a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff open at the bottom. Now you guys are just staring at that. But yeah, so the idea is that it's really, really good quality when you're creating like SVGs. One of the worst things is for me, like when you're getting an image, is to try and figure out like the quality, the DPI, and the variations. There's also a couple good cheat sheets. I don't know where I put them now. That tell you, like, for LinkedIn, these are the sizes you should use. For Instagram, these are the sizes you should use. The cool thing about Canva is Canva has these presets. Probably because I'm not sharing. Yes. There you go. Share. I'm just doing desktop, so it should show everything. Okay. So the cool thing with Canva is that you can, like, you've got these presets that are specific sizes. So if you're ever not sure, you can always look. This is a LinkedIn post. Yeah. So a LinkedIn post is a specific size, poster, logo, flyer, video. So it gives you those sizes on the side here. So when you click on it, it will come out. So even if you're not making it in Canva, you can always come back to Canva and figure out what the sizes are, or just Google it. Like there's one that's, yeah, there's one that's in my brain is for LinkedIn. So in LinkedIn, when you're posting a link to something, it comes up with a set size that image can be, and it's 1200 by 628. And I know that because that's the one thing I do the most out of anything. So yeah, but it's nice to have these presets on the side here within Canva. Yeah.
You can obviously bring in your own videos or images.
Yeah, so when you've got, for example, this video, you've got this thing called uploads. So here, I mean, this is what I did to create the advert for this. Got a couple other things like the MARiS logo, and these are videos and things that we've done, like image background. you the MARiS logo. I'm making an infographic. It's like, what am I making? Yeah, you can. Sorry, this is all going to like other stuff that I do for work. Yeah, so you can find like interesting images and you can bring this in, and it all exists in your uploads section or your video section. So you can actually even show you a few things about, this is in MARiS. We've got our MARiS channel. So this is all our things that we've done, you know, the news flash that went out today was created in Canva.
And so that's your MARiS newsletter. Who does it get sent to? Like, who's the target and what
This
do
is Layla's department. Layla.
Hey, what's the question?
Your target, it's the ECR news flash or newsletter, so it's going out
Yeah,
to
the
the
MARiS
ECR.
ECRs, yeah.
But what's nice also in Canva, which is something we've just tried, is that you can see here, it's me, Layla, this is the MARiS Comms team. So we've got the whole team. You can invite people. So we've got the MARiS Comms team in Canva. So items, it's all online, all hosted online. So you're able to, you know, work on everything. Yeah, so you've got like the people, we've got like our MARiS Comms team, like everyone that's part of it has access to it. Yeah, so like if I go to my projects, then I've got others as well. Like this is like personal stuff, MARiS, company I work for.
Can you share some of the stuff you do? I mean, it's a Lizard, it's a very specific company and their target is very specific. What do you do for them?
So for them, I make a bunch of different things. This was their values poster that they printed and put. I made different variations. So some of these elements I built and made myself. For them, they have, I'm trying to find a nice video. This one, like, I can play this one in, so yeah. So that was just like a video, a short video. But for them, what I personally do is, I mean, I'll go to LinkedIn. I run generally their LinkedIn and their Twitter. So here, if you are owners of any pages, it shows up here on your LinkedIn. So you can click on here. And then like all of these posts. So when they have interns, we post about that. We have interesting reads that we post. This is a blog series. So if you go to the actual website, we've created like this image I created for them. This is a blog post, you know, creating images for them. Yeah, so generally it's creating a lot of static images and videos, posting, and also learning to write copy. So this is what you would call copy on a post. So it's learning to use the right hashtags in right combination to get more traction. And then if you have it, you normally have this analytics page, so you can see how many visitors you get. Your activity shows like who's liked posts and who's been part of it. So, I mean, when I started, like they've got 2,300 followers. Yeah, and
is that on LinkedIn?
this is on LinkedIn. And this, when I started, it was 0. So we've gotten like those followers. So, I mean, if I go, for example, to MARiS, we only have like 3 followers. Oh, I actually don't know. We have 59 followers, which is great. started this like what, a month ago, 2 months ago. So yeah, here also we did the women in science posts. What's nicer is there's a thing called Plannable. If Instagram is logged in. So Plannable is also something you can use to schedule posts. Like again, here I've got workspaces. So I've got a MARiS workspace. We've linked to our Twitter, our LinkedIn, and this. So if you want to manage different things, or you want to use like content across different platforms, it's something that's really, really nice. This again, we've all got, everyone is on here and everyone's got that. The only thing is that Instagram, you have to like approve it on your phone because it's just a weird thing. But for example, if I want to make a post, you can create, start a new post. You can add different things. Yeah, so here's all our posts. If you want to repost this one, you can repost to a different channel or a Twitter channel or whatever. It's an issue there. Yeah, so I don't know if Instagram, yeah. So Instagram was also, we created the Women in Science Reels, this thing. Yeah, so it's our little Women in Science Reels.
I'm sorry, I have to go to session. I just wanted to sing Gabriella's praise for a second. Because,
Okay, yeah.
I have a current project single-handedly because of her. We have like close to 5,500 Instagram followers and 12,000 followers on our Facebook. And we've had our Facebook page the longest. And we started it right from the beginning, and that sort of just grew slowly, but it's grown massively. Since the last say 3 or 4 years.
It is beneficial that you have a very cute organism.
No, and I think that's the challenge, hey, because I also work on things that aren't beautiful, and I never even think about how to like think about visually presenting that information at all. So yeah, they're very pretty. Please, I'd love to be on that list.
Yeah,
of when you send
I'll
out
send out like a cheat sheet at some point. Does anyone else have any questions? Plannable is free. Yes. Are there any questions on that? Okay, cool. Thanks. Yes, Plannable is free. And it is actually a really nice thing. You can have different workspaces. So like I said, I've got 2 workspaces here. This one is a shared workspace with other people. It helps with collaborative projects. So for example, if you want to do something for your lab and then everyone wants to contribute, then the person who has the actual login on their phone will have to then just approve like Instagram posts. But other than that, everything else posts automatically. And so, for example, you create a new one. Say now I want to repost this. So I want to repost this on Instagram. At the bottom here, you can schedule. So you can say, I wanted to post on the 21st at 1 o'clock, 1:23, and you go, okay. And then then you can click on it and it will schedule. So you manage everything through that, which is great. Now have I set this to be, that's the question. You might have a surprise on the 21st, we're going to repost of something. Yeah, and you'll see like pending things, and you get stories and different things that you can add on and change. Yeah, cool.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that. And also beautiful presentation.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
All the colors pop out. Like I think I'm just like a visual learner.
I think a lot of people are visual people.
Yeah.
And then what we could potentially do, if people are interested in, if you have an idea of something, we can create another workshop, like another chatty in a couple of weeks' time, where we can create something you want to create together. And I can walk around and other people can come and say like, oh, I found this is really cool in Canva, and we can create videos and a bunch of content if people are interested in that. Like a hackathon, but
like a quick fire content creation.
Yeah.
And then you having time.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other idea is also we are actually I think the email went out, but I still need to post on Instagram. We're looking for content creators, people who just want to create content. And so get a topic and create something. And if you want to play around, might be an easy way to learn. So just send your names to MARiS, and then we'll, as the comms team.
If we could sit in a room
Yes.
and have short format content creation, because I think with things like blogs and that's like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's too much. But if I'm saying, I think that you just say like create
A
an Instagram post.
30-second video on something. Yeah.
Like here together, it could just spark some creativity.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. So we can do that then next time. And even online, people can sit and ask questions, and then almost like a writing lab, but a content lab.
Yeah.
And then we all just sit, play some music. Cool. I'm going to stop sharing.
Well done, Kath.
All right. And if anyone has any questions, you can email me, and I will hopefully respond. Oh, Luther, you got FOMO.
Well done, Kath. That was great.
Cheers.